Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, reviewing the Bucktool 1x42 combo belt grinder. So call it an excuse, an obstacle, I'll just call it a challenge, but whatever you want to call it, are the expense and maybe the questions that arise in buying a belt grinder keeping you from making a knife? Well, we may have the solution for you today, or we may not. Listen up to find out. Let's face it, pro 2x72-inch belt grinders can cost an arm and a leg. So lately I've been asking if there's a way to kind of edge into this hobby, knife making, without a huge layout of cash on a big professional grinder. Now, last week I tested a Harbor Freight 1x30. This week I'll step up to a slightly larger, more powerful, and feature-rich machine, a Bucktool 1x42-inch combo belt grinder and disc sander. So the first question, and absolutely the most important one, is can you make a knife with this machine at all? Second question, what'll the machine do and what will it not? Final question, is it worth the money? All right, let's find out.
Bucktool is an online purveyor of mostly Chinese-made tools. At the release time of this video, the grinder lists for $239 on the Bucktool website. It consists of a belt grinder running a 1-inch by 42-inch belt, as well as an 8-inch disc sander driven by a motor rated at, not sure how many horsepower. Doesn't say. I'm going to guess between a third and a half. The 2-speed motor can be run at 3450 or 1750 RPM, allowing you to go full bore or back down the speed a little for fine work, sharpening, and that sort of thing. The machine weighs a little over 50 pounds, small enough to be moved around, but not so light that you could just knock it over. So full disclosure, this machine was shipped to me at no cost to me by Bucktool. I'm not being paid for this review, and I'm not getting any affiliate money, so take all that for whatever it's worth. There are dust ports in the rear, a removable belt cover, a handle for detensioning the idler wheel so you can change belts, and a tiny little tracking knob for adjusting the belt to keep it centered on the platen. Changing belts is not super fun. Here's me changing the belt on my Bader B3. And here I am changing the belt on my Bucktool. It's not a huge deal, but let's face it, it does make changing belts a bit of a pain in the neck. The tool ships mostly assembled. Basically all you have to do is put on the work tables for the two grinding tools. This is a minor pain in the neck, but not that bad. I had my grinder operating within half an hour of opening the box. Both work tables are light, cheap aluminum, and not very smooth to adjust, but they work and can be adjusted to a wide range of angles for grinding. At angles. So my evaluation here is of the grinder's capability for knife making. As such, I'm mainly interested in the belt grinder portion of the tool. Your only grinding surface is a small, cheap, and slightly wobbly flat platen. It's not great, but it does the job. The work table is not big, but will accommodate a smallish flat-bottom grinding jig if you want to run one. I grind mostly freehand, so I found the table served mainly to get in my way. If I were using this all the time, I'd probably just remove the table. On the other hand, if you like grinding with a jig, keep it on. I will say the table does interfere with changing the belts. Maybe there's some way to get around that, but I found getting the belt around the sort of nose of that table to be not easy at all. The bottom line, though, is that although not as capable as a big 2x72, you can definitely grind a knife just fine. Because the belt grinder portion only has the one grinding surface, you'll find the machine a little challenging when it comes to grinding radii, and of course you can't hollow grind or any of that sort of thing. But that's to be expected at this price point. In operation, the motor's pretty quiet. I can stall this motor out when I'm grinding. But it's not like the Harbor Freight grinder I reviewed last week, which basically just bogs down as soon as you put any pressure on it at all. This grinder is much more powerful than that, a significant step up in power. I use the machine to do all phases of grinding a knife, outlining, beveling, handle work, and so on. It worked fine, given the basic limitations of the machine. 1x42 belts won't last forever, but if you're roughing with ceramic belts, you should be able to manage to make several knives with your heavier grit belts. The machine ships with one belt and one disc, but you'll obviously need to buy more. I advise ditching the aluminum oxide belt immediately and replacing it with 36 grit, 60 grit, and 120 grit ceramic belts, as well as some fine grit aluminum oxide, that is 220 and above, and some structured abrasive belts like 3M Gator Grit Trizac belts, which are really nice for finishing work. The disc grinder features hook and loop, i.e. Velcro type abrasive discs. I prefer PSA discs, which maintain flatness better, but Velcro is easier to take on and off than adhesive discs, so if you want to swap out a variety of grits, it has definite advantages. It's also kind of mushy, which means it's not as good for flattening things that really need to be flat. Knife scales, for instance, which you just can't fudge on. That said, the mushiness of Velcro type sanding discs results in a very nice smooth finish. Overall build quality, not horrible, but not that great. Good bit of plastic, a lot of stamped metal, but again, about what you'd expect for this price. And that, folks, is about it. Bottom line, it doesn't have the flexibility, power, or rigidity of fancier 2x72 grinders, but it's far superior to the 1x30 grinder that I've mentioned earlier. And the price is right.
Okay, so let's summarize. Now, if you watch my Harbor Freight 1x30 video, this wrap-up is going to sound somewhat familiar, but with a difference. So what I'm going to do here is make a very, very qualified recommendation of this machine. Can it make a knife? As we've seen, absolutely. It'll grind steel, and it'll do it fast enough and accurately enough to make a blade. Is it up to the standards of rigidity, power, belt life, all that stuff with a pro machine? Absolutely not. But it costs $250. That's literally 1/10 of what it costs to buy a pro machine. Look, is it going to last forever? Probably not, but again, $250, right? How good is it? Well, honestly, not that great, but relative to what? We already know that American-made pro belt grinders are better. On the other hand, relative to a tiny little 1x30 like I reviewed last week, it is a much more capable machine. In other words, My opinion anyway, it's a reasonable bargain for the price. So who's this machine for? I mean, if I were just getting started, I'd unhesitatingly say, step up to this machine over something like the Harbor Freight 1x30, 100%. If you can't afford this machine, seriously, you're gonna struggle, affording to make knives at all. The additional belt life, more aggressive grinding ability, having dual speeds, more power, rigidity, overall, versatility, all of that makes this machine a better deal if you can possibly afford it. To me, the disc grinder, that's just kind of a throw-in. It's okay, it could be handy, but it's not that big a deal to me. So overall, if I were just starting out, wanting to dip my toe into knife making and I really didn't have too much scratch, this grinder is definitely worth a look. Temper your expectations. As you gain skill and knowledge, you'll probably hit a ceiling with this machine, but it'll definitely get you started for sure. All right, guys, thanks for watching and keep on making those knives. Or if you haven't started, get started. This machine might do it for you.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe and make sure that you click on that bell so you get notified of all the latest videos. Want to buy a knife from me? Check out my modern blades at tacticsarmory.com. Digging the channel? You can support our video making efforts on Patreon. I've been banging away on these videos for like 10 years, so I hope you'll show some love for all that hard work. Link in the cards and descriptions. Finally, if you're interested in making Japanese swords, check out my full line of Japanese sword videos where I show how to forge Japanese swords as well as how to polish them and how to make fittings, handles, and scabbards. WalterSorrellsBlades.com.